Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Diamond's Edge Live. This week, we're going to be looking at the correction that is unfolding. Okay, we looked at the first 2 weeks of August and how the 12th and 13th specifically, we were looking for a topping situation that seems to be the case. I'm going to go over a few scenarios, whether we can see, slight new highs in some stock or indexes, or we simply have this correction unfold where last week marked a significant high. And so I think what is important is that you not necessarily want to chase this market higher, even if we do trade higher. And I'll go over what I'm looking at in terms of those scenarios. But really, there's two things that I'm looking at, over the next few months. Really, is this going to be a violent, intense correction, or is it going to be mild, choppy, kind of confusing? That's the scenarios that I think that we're facing here. We are looking at, this five-wave move up that happened, and now we're looking at this ABC three-wave correction. So the problem with corrections is that you don't know, again, whether it's going to be intense or whether it's going to be, kind of this mild, confusing correction. Now, the good thing, regardless of which scenario unfolds, is that once you get that three-wave correction, guess what? You get another five-wave move up, okay? But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's focus on, over the next few weeks, what scenarios we can look at. All right, so I'm going to dive into some of the indices and sectors, and we'll look at some big tech stocks as well, NVIDIA, AMD, TSM, stuff like that. All right, so let me start with the Nasdaq here. All right, and this is a chart that I highlighted to 10 stock trader subscribers this morning. This is a Nasdaq Composite Index. Okay, and again, you can see I've labeled this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You'll see over the last over the charts. We looked at August 5th and 6th, and then 12th and 13th. You can see, a lot of stocks topped out last week on this 13th, and now we're having this drop. All right. Now, what I highlighted this morning is I'm highlighting this RSI down here. If we get a drop, okay, in the Nasdaq that where, we see price make a higher low off of this swing low back in August 1st, okay, but RSI comes down and makes a new low, that sets up at least a short-term bottom. Okay, we'll have to wait and see. We have the Federal Reserve minutes later today. And then, Jerome Powell is speaking at Jackson Hole. Usually this tends to be an important meeting. Is that going to change now with the pressure that he's been facing? I'm not sure. Okay, we saw, CPI come out that was lower, but producer prices come in that was much higher. Does that give him just to say, you know what, we're just going to wait and see? I don't know how the market is going to react to that. So it's something to keep an eye on. It's certainly a catalyst. There's no doubt about that. All right, so this is what I'm looking at in the Nasdaq, at least in the very, very short term. But you can see here we have this clear wave 5. Now, moving beyond what we saw in terms of that 2-week time frame where there is the top, we are either going to see this situation unfold where we get a drop, okay, and I'll highlight this for you right now, where we get a drop, okay, and then the next sort of inflection point. And again, all these tend to be just very short term, based upon the rules of Elliott wave and then time. This doesn't mean that I'm calling for a crash. Again, we're looking at a 5-wave move up with an ABC corrective move. Okay, those are just the rules. Okay, so are we going to see a situation like this? And now I've highlighted late August and around Labor Day. You can go all the way back well over 100 years and look at how Labor Day has created highs and lows. Sometimes they're pretty intense. Look no further than the crash of 1929, and look what happened around Labor Day. Okay, that marked the high, right? That's on the extreme. Okay, same thing with 1987. That started to top out that market there. I'm not saying that's going to happen now, but if you go back, just over the last few years, you can see how around Labor Day will mark important trading opportunities. Let's put it at that. Not necessarily crashes or or big bottoms, but trading opportunities. So if we think about this ABC correction, okay, and if we continue lower from this August 13th top, okay, all this means is that heading into Labor Day, this could just create this A wave, all right, and then from there we would get something around something like this. Okay, so a B wave, into let's call it late September, and then the C wave heading into October. That would be the ideal setup. And again, this is A, this is B, right? Let's get that a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay, and then you get your C wave into October. All right, that's the general scenario in terms of this three-wave correction. Now, again, as I said at the start, is this going to be something where it's volatile and intense, right? A lot of catalysts, earnings, the Fed, right? War in Iran or Ukraine, peace, no peace, what's going to happen? Is it going to be intense, or is it just going to be more of a sideways move, right? Work off overbought corrections, and then we rally into that next five-wave move up. That's what we have to see. But to me, this is the best probability setup for the next few months. All right. So that's the Nasdaq. You can see here in the Dow, I've already outlined this, and again, this red is the more intense, and the black is the more mild, choppy, corrective, confusing type of move over the next few months. Now you can also see, and I'm going to delete this black one here, and you can see here there's another scenario where we actually create this high into Labor Day, right? So the Nasdaq, the Dow here did not drop as much yesterday or the last couple of days as much as the Nasdaq. That was something to keep in mind. So is there a scenario where, let's say, the Dow extends up into late August, Labor Day, then corrects, right? And then we see divergence develop in SMH or IWM. We'll get to IWM in a second, okay? And then, we still have this larger correction unfold. That's certainly a possibility, okay? And as I told 10 Stocks Trader subscribers this morning, if we see this scenario unfold where we get another high into Labor Day, to me, that's a situation to buy put options, all right? So that's the Dow. Let's look at SMH, which has obviously been a leader this year, okay? And we'll look at some of the stocks within it. But you can see, again, this August 13th high, right? And now we've corrected. So is this in a scenario where we get a drop and we test this swing low from earlier this month, okay? The 55-day moving average is right around here. Maybe we rally into Labor Day, late August, okay, and then we get a correction. Or the other thing that unfolds is we have this choppy, okay, where we get a short-term low, we get another high, it can't break above that August 13th high, and then we trade back down into September and August, or September and October, okay? So that's the situation that I'm looking at, with some of the bigger sectors, the leading sectors, semiconductors certainly. When we look at IWM, and I believe we've been tracking this for quite a while on the show, we can see that it did not make new highs with the rest of the market this year. This high from late November of 2024 is still intact, okay? Now, IWM has had a nice move of late, but we're to the top, right on that August 13th date, okay? But when I look at this really close, all right, let's zoom in here, and if I just do something like this, and this is what I'm going to be looking forward to over the next week or two. So let's say this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into late August, early September. Again, this Labor Day time factor, right? Then we can have this correction. It still wouldn't make a new high above this late December or late 2024 high. So that would create price divergence too, where that's something where I would look to likely trade put options, especially if we see divergence elsewhere in the market, which I think we will see. All right. So if we look at IWM, small caps, SMH, the Dow, the Nasdaq, we have some scenarios to keep in mind in terms of whether we get, this is all very short-term moves. So you have to remember this is a corrective pattern that's unfolding. It can get confusing. It can get choppy. All right. So you have to be tactical in your trading almost in terms of, all right, we're going to look for short-term lows, we're going to look for short-term highs, and that's how you navigate this environment, okay? Sticking with the semiconductors, all right, this is advanced micro devices. Again, this topped out on the 13th. You can see it's had a nice move down. Now, look at some of this RSI action. You can actually see here, this is already starting to complete or trigger a positive RSI reversal. Now, this has to stay this price action. So if we see a big drop today or later this week, and AMD drops below, what's that low there? 157.80. Okay, that negates this positive RSI reversal. All right, and so now if this holds, this could mean that we get, this grinding move higher again over the next week or two. All right, I could totally see that as a possibility. That's not something that I would chase. That's my point this week, is to not chase that into Labor Day. To me, that would be a place to actually, again, buy put options. Okay, because then we likely unfold into that corrective pattern over the next, call it 2 months. Okay, so something to keep in mind there. We can also look at Nvidia. Everyone knows this stock. Again, the high was on actually on the 12th, but 13th started dropping, and now we had that big move down yesterday. Same thing. Let's look at the RSI. It's already at 51. How low can this go? Does it get choppy here and we create a low into late August and Labor Day? All right, and that creates an opportunity to take some profit on any put options, possibly even go long. Again, this is all very short-term stuff, but you can see how this is coming together. August 12th, August 13th marked as top off of a 5-wave move. Now we're looking at corrective price action over the next few weeks, maybe a few months. Let's look at Caterpillar. Actually, let's stick with semiconductors now. Taiwan Semiconductor has had a nice move, but again, you can see here that this actually topped out in July and has gone sideways. So this has already been in this corrective pattern. I looked this morning, or actually late last night, and I was tracking Taiwan stocks. Okay, and you can see it had a big drop last night, right? So this is starting to top out again. After a nice move higher, this confirms to me that we're in this corrective pattern. All right, I like looking at stocks overseas, even though we don't trade them. It's good to understand how everything is flowing globally, and this kind of confirms to me that again we are in this corrective pattern. Doesn't mean we can't make new highs. I'm not saying that. Again, we've gone over that scenario. But to me, this isn't something that you want to chase. All right. So let's switch over to Caterpillar. And Caterpillar's had a nice move. This also topped out in late July. Okay. And you can see on the RSI, we're already, if we've dropped significantly. If we get into this low in September, okay, or Labor Day, late August, and we get into oversold conditions, this is a situation where we would actually buy call options. All right, so something to keep an eye on. Let's look at, what else can we look at? Let's look at Microsoft. All right, and this will be the last one, and then I'm happy to take any questions. Okay, well, you can see Microsoft here, topped out July 31st, and it's just been in this corrective price action after a nice big move up. So, and you can see here, RSI is down to 46. Within bull markets, stocks or whatever market you're looking at, the RSI likes to trade into support on the RSI around the 40 level. So that would be something to keep an eye on. But even if that doesn't hold, you're looking at oversold conditions heading into, let's say it drops over the next 2 weeks, right? That gets us into Labor Day, and now you're in an oversold condition within a bull market heading into a historical turning point trading opportunity at least. Okay, that would be something where I'll look to start buying. All right, so those are the scenarios that I'm looking at over the next few weeks. Again, we looked at the high last week for August 13th. Many stocks, many indices are looking at a 5-wave move up. We're in this strong bull market, but now we're looking at this corrective move that is either going to be intense or it's going to be mild and choppy. And then we'll look at specific time factors, heading over the next 3 weeks, call it, even probably 3 months, if we're honest, and how this whole thing unfolds, before this bull market likely takes off. However, given that, I still think that there are some good trading opportunities, at least short-term trading tactically here. All right, I'm happy to take some questions. How about Intel? Yeah, so the government is going to take a stake in Intel, and look, I've tracked this stock for years and years and years and years, and every time I hear somebody say, "Oh, there's a bullish catalyst," they're building this, they're expanding their capital expenditures, new CEOs, new strategy. They're acquiring this, they're acquiring that. It's just a stock that has not kept up with, certainly with AMD or Nvidia or TSM. Okay, and so now that the government's taking a stake, do you really want the government to be involved in uh, this type of industry? I'm not so sure. You know, the government loses $1 billion a year delivering mail. Do you really want them getting involved in microchips and computer processing? Not something that I would do. All right, but regardless of my opinion or my bias, let's look at what the chart action is saying. And it's had plenty of moves. Okay, but since 2020 has been in a bear market. It's been in a downtrend relative to Nvidia, AMD, TSM, all these other things that have just, skyrocketed higher. So is this something that you could take a punt on and have a very low risk entry point here, right? It's trading at 25, you put your stop down here at 18, sure. Is this something that is going to be a long-term investment? Not right now. Okay, if you follow Paul Tudor Jones, he talks about, a stock will have to be above its 200-day moving average for me to look at it in terms of investment. Okay, it traded above it. Now can it sustain this? Okay, make new swing highs and then sustain a new uptrend. What would that have to be? Let's say this is the low. Okay, right? Government's stepping in. They have the backing, the tariffs. All the rules around what's happening with China and this chip war. Okay, let's see this start to make a series of higher highs and higher lows, and keep up with the rest of the market, and then I would switch my my outlook on this stock. Why is Labor Day so special historically as an inflection point? Are there any other holidays where the market tends to react? That's a great question. So I don't get into the why of Labor Day. Some people say uh, all the traders and bankers are coming back from vacation, and then things get a little hectic. I don't really focus on the why, other than that it historically has. Let's go back and look at and some of those inflection points, okay? And we can go back to the big crashes and stuff, but you can look and just see, okay, this is going back to 2024, okay, this is last year. And look, was this the biggest move in the world? No. But this was the high on August 30th, right? And then the day after, when the market opened back up, okay, you had this drop, right? So that's something that I'm looking at, again, something for this year. And whether that's a low or a high, that's something that we're going to have to check out, okay? You can see here, same thing, 2023. We had a short-term top into it, and we had a nice little drop. Not the biggest move in the world, but something to keep an eye on, okay? You can go back right here, right, and look in August, and this actually created a low around Labor Day, right? This was actually after a big move. But if you really want to get crazy, okay, and, we can go all the way back to, let's see, where was one that was actually really, really good? I think this is, yeah, here we go. So this is right before the election in 2020, okay? Rallied into Labor Day, and then that created a significant top. So you can see, again, I'm not saying that this is going to be a crash or a huge bottom. Historically, they are trading opportunities. They are turning points. Are there any others that tend to be? When I look at, it's around Labor Day, okay, and then around Christmas also tends to be trading opportunities, turning points. All right. Check out PLTR. Yeah, that had a big move too. This has obviously been a very popular stock, momentum. Well, you can see here, this topped out on the 13th, just like all the other stocks we've been looking at. So it's obviously been in this clear uptrend. So, and this is something that I was looking at over the weekend, actually. And what I'm going to be looking at is I'm going to be tracking some of the Fibonacci retracement levels. Okay, so I'm going to, and you can see how I do this here. If we start trading into this support down in here, and again, especially if this happens into and around Labor Day, you can see the RSI is already, at 43. If we get into an extreme oversold condition and there's a lot of panic, this could be a situation to buy call options. When you have a stock where the price can remain flat for long stretches of time, how do those plateaus figure into your wave analysis? That's a great question, and that just tells me, let's go back to Intel. right? Because I think that is something where this is exactly what you're talking about. So if you go back to, what is this? It's been a year, August 2024, all the way hasn't done much. It's just gone sideways. To me, coming off of this downtrend, this is still corrective. Now you could make the argument, um, although I think it would be a weak one, that this would be the low, okay, and this would, but I just don't see that. So to me, if you were to answer your question, coming off of this move, I would look at something like this. Okay, so I would have these different Fibonacci retracement levels. All right, and then what I would do is, to me, when I see this sideways, I almost always think it's a wave four. So you can see how it's, maybe it pops a little bit higher, but I would expect at least a fifth wave move down. And maybe that creates the low, okay? Everyone gets excited about the government stepping in. You see this rush, you see this positioning, that it gets on the wrong side. What's going to happen? What's going to hurt the most people is if this continues to make a new low, and maybe that is actually a puke out low. Everyone gives up on it until it has no hope. That would actually be a low that we want to buy. So that's kind of how I would look at those sideways moves. Those sideways moves are simply corrective patterns. You just have to figure out whether it's going to be within an uptrend or a downtrend. In this case, it's a downtrend. All right. So thanks for tuning in this week. Remember to like and subscribe. We'll see how these scenarios play out, and certainly with Friday's speech with Jerome Powell, that could be a catalyst that sets us up for next week, and then we're into Labor Day, so we'll discuss that next week. Thank you very much.